Yes, the GPU in this build was very hard to find. Yes, I paid way too much money for it. But yes, this is still a very baller gaming PC that you can actually repeat right now here in 2021. It's just a little overpriced. Let's have a look. Big thanks to Digital Chill Mart for sponsoring today's video, but hold up, before you fast forward through yet another pre-roll ad, we need to have a little chat. If you're watching a ZTT video right now, then chances are you're either a baller or at least you have some baller PC building genetics inside of you. And guys, I'm telling you one thing, ballers do not use PCs with an unactivated version of Windows 10. It's just too easy and cheap these days to buy a Windows 10 key on places like Digital Chill Mart. They're now giving my baller audience an exclusive 50% off discount code if you use code ZTT50. Whether you're on your main baller gaming PC like mine here, or you're about to sell your latest gaming PC flip, do yourself a favor and make sure that Windows 10 key is activated by visiting Digital Chill Mart today. And yes, people with an activated version of Windows 10 can upgrade to Windows 11 for free, so there's no need to wait for that. Alright, so you guys have definitely been asking for more realistic builds lately. Apparently, some of you don't like it when I hawk GPU selling websites like Mercari and EVGA Vstock and snipe the deals like I've been telling you to do for months now. So in today's build, it's rocking exactly 0 good deals and it's 100% repeatable right now. Starting with the CPU, this here is the Intel i3 10100F that I picked up on Amazon for $117 brand new. This is a 4-core and 8-threaded CPU with a max turbo of up to 4.3 GHz, and this is one seriously underrated CPU. I think that most people that are actively involved in PC flipping or PC building communities like the ZTT Discord server, which is linked down below by the way, they already know that the 10100F is a good buy, but for the less educated folks, I feel like a lot of those people just think that all Intel i3s still suck. On the contrary, for $117, this is one of the best price to performance budget CPUs available right now, and it can pair pretty well with some upper mid-range graphics cards. It can also pair pretty well with some budget motherboards, but I actually opted for a sexy AF ASRock B460 Steel Legend, and this decision was purely on aesthetics. If you're trying to save some money, then feel free to go with the cheaper B460 motherboard here, but you guys already know that I love to use the Steel Legend series for these white and black builds. For RAM, this is yet another YOLO 2x8GB kit that's clocked at 3200 MHz, and this is actually the white version, which costs a little bit more than the black version that I usually use. This 3200 MHz kit was a bit cheaper than the 3000 MHz kit whenever I was buying it, so that's why I have it. No need to go that high with a budget Intel build like this one here. Next up, we have some storage, and this is the PNY 500GB CS2130 NVMe drive, which is rocking ridiculous read and write speeds of up to 3500 megabytes per second and 3000 megabytes per second, and this is rated a moderate NVMe drive on the SSD tier list. Definitely a solid pickup for around $58 brand new. Another solid pickup is the power supply, and tell me if you've heard this before, but this is yet again the EVGA 450BR. I'm not going to consider this a good deal because you can literally always find it when they drop on EVGA Vstock for $25, and I tend to buy them every single time. The 450BR is rated tier C on the LTT tier list, and for 25 bucks, it's hard to use anything else, to be honest. Next up, we have the case, and this is the Corsair 275R, and oh man, I know this has been out for a while now, but I'm so glad that I finally made a build inside of it. I picked this up on a ZTT deal from our Discord server for $55 a few months ago, but it usually sits around $80 on Amazon, and that's the price I'm using today. It's rocking some decent airflow up at the front, has an all clean white and black aesthetic, including a full PSU shroud basement, and best of all, it allows us to vertically mount our GPU. That GPU is indeed the worst deal in this entire build guide. Honestly, this may be the single worst deal that I've ever purchased in the history of ZTT so far, but this is the MSI GTX 1060 Armor 3GB card, and I paid an obnoxious $233 for it. I actually purchased 3 of them for $700 total on Mercari, but this was a few months ago when my GPU stock was dwindling, and I was seriously worried that I wasn't going to be able to crank out any more build guides for you guys here on the channel. But here in 2021, you cannot just look at the GPU price alone. This build that we're rocking today cost me a tad bit over $700 before adding the aesthetic accessories, and that's still not an absolute garbage price for someone's first gaming PC. Buying an extremely overpriced GTX 1060 may just be the difference between someone being able to jump into PC gaming or not, so in my opinion, this really wouldn't be a terrible build guide to follow. Now, of course, I would highly recommend you exercise some patience and snipe the good deals. Like I said, I didn't buy anything in this build guide today on a sale, and the reason for that was to illustrate that you can still build a very capable system here in 2021 it's just a little overpriced. The other good thing about a system like this is that the 10100F can certainly handle a graphics card upgrade in the future, so feel free to go with a cheaper and easier to find one now, knowing that whenever this GPU apocalypse is over, you'll be able to simply upgrade it and you'll be perfectly fine. Do keep in mind that you may need a beefier power supply depending on what you upgrade to. And speaking of that GPU apocalypse, guys, I think that prices have finally peaked. Not only am I seeing a ton of articles lately talking about how things may be turning around, but I'm seeing it with my own eyes on the used GPU market that prices are not just halting, but they're actually going down in some cases as well. We've had a lot of discussions about this in our ZTT Discord community over the last week or so. Have you joined us yet, by the way? And although there are still months and months to go before things get back to normal, I think it's safe to say that the worst is officially over and hopefully PC tech in general just gets popping again. Good news like this is definitely always worth sharing, but let's wrap up some of these optional aesthetic only parts for this build guide, and then we'll get into the benchmarking run. If you decide to mount the GPU like I did vertically, then you'll need a riser cable. I personally went with the Fractal Design Flex VRC25, but there are some better options out there if you find a better deal. For cable extensions, these actually aren't the typical Asia Horse cables that I normally use. These are from Antec and only cost me $20. Antec cables are definitely a little stiffer than other cables, but for $20, it's hard to argue with the quality. And finally, the last aesthetic option I have is the CPU cooler. This is the Arctic Freezer 34 Esports, and although you definitely don't need this beefy of a cooler for a 10100F, this one is an absolute beauty and fits perfectly inside this build. The color scheme is 100% on point, and it definitely keeps the 10100F running at low temperatures, as we're about to see in the benchmarking section. Before that though, we gotta take a final look at this parts list. Like I said, before adding the aesthetic only parts, I paid around $700, including that extremely overpriced GTX 1060, and then if you do decide to 100% copy every part in this build, you're looking at a closer to an $800 final purchasing price. Jumping into this benchmarking section, we'll start with Valheim. Just like last week, I actually uploaded an extended benchmarking run over on my ZTT Extras channel where I tested double the amount of games, but yeah, here in 1080p with medium settings, this $700 build cranked out 92 frames per second. After that was CSGO, and this here is some serious proof that the 10100F is no joke, as in 1080p with pro settings, I got an obnoxious 309 FPS. That one was certainly easy to run, but Assassin's Creed Valhalla isn't, and still with this 10100F and overpriced GTX 1060 combo, I got right on the money at 60 FPS in 1080p with low settings. Due to the popularity rising in our Discord server, I fired up Apex Legends next. I guess this game might actually be increasing in popularity lately, I don't know, but in 1080p with low settings, I got 123 FPS. Rainbow Six Siege followed up after that, and with using the built-in benchmarking tool in 1080p with high settings, this system got 172 frames per second. The new Outriders was up next. Has there been any demanding new games like this one recently, by the way? Please let me know down in the comment section. And in 1080p with medium settings, we got 58 FPS. The Fortnite God's Playground followed up after that, and in 1080p Pro settings, I got a surprisingly beautiful 221 FPS, and this one definitely shocked me with just how smooth it was. A not so smooth one was Call of Duty Warzone though, just like every other benchmarking run lately, and in 1080p with low settings, I still got over the 60 mark with 72 FPS. And just like always, we'll wrap up the benchmarking run with 3D Mark Time Spy. Once again, that extended benchmarking run video will be linked down in the description, and this gaming PC cranked out a modest 3,977. That 3D Mark Time Spy score definitely paints the picture that this isn't nearly my best price to performance gaming PC build guide. Usually around this price, we're closer to the 6,000 to 7,000 point range, but like I said, that wasn't the goal of this build. This one was simply to show you that even if you spend way too much money on a GPU, you're finally able to jump into the world of PC gaming, and you can still do that with a decent system like this. Make sure you let me know down below what you thought of this build guide, and if you're looking for a higher price to performance gaming PC at this similar price point, then feel free to click the video that's on the screen now. But just like always, I hope you enjoyed this video.